Welcome to this week's episode of Virtually Amazing Assistants. And today I am thrilled to be interviewing Rebecca Newenham of Get Ahead VA, which is not just a VA. I'll let you describe it, whether you're an agency or not later, but is also a franchise. And I think that's a very exciting thing to be chatting about. But before we start doing that, let me introduce you to Rebecca. And as usual, I've got my crib sheet. So so that I don't forget anything, which I'm prone to doing. So Rebecca is a qualified franchise professional with the British Franchise Association. I want to make sure I get the words right. And she's also a business owner, a mentor, a coach, a franchise consultant, and a flexible working champion, which is very important because just before we came on air, we were just talking about what happens when you need to take a day off when you're not very well. So we're going to talk about that in a moment. So after a successful career in corporate buying, and I find this bit fascinating, she founded the award-winning outsourcing agency Get Ahead VA in 2017. I think we chatted, I think we met around about then somewhere online. I can't remember. And she welcomed her first, no, she's founded the Get Ahead in 2010 and the first franchise in 2017. See, even with a crib sheet, I got it wrong. There you go. But I'm human. So Rebecca helps other businesses realize the benefits of franchising. And she's also written a book called Virtually Yours, which is a guide to finding flexible working through franchising. So lots of stuff about franchising. But first of all, Rebecca, what made you leave corporate buying and set up as effectively a VA?
I actually had an 8-year career break, Shelley, between finishing as a corporate buyer and then launching my own business. And I don't think I was ever really a corporate girl. And like you said earlier, I must apologise. I've got a croaky voice having had tonsillitis. But no, I loved it. I loved huge aspects of it, but I never really felt comfortable. And I think looking back now as a 52-year-old woman with some hindsight, I think, yeah, I loved it, but it wasn't where I was going to be longer term.
Yeah, I think working in corporate is a very specific thing. And I think if you're any bit tiny bit rebellious and rule breaking, then corporate can feel very restrictive.
Exactly.
If
Yeah.
you've got
Suffocating, I
that,
think, for me.
yeah, if you've got that entrepreneurial streak and you want to do things
Mm.
in the way that you want to do them, then it's quite hard to do that when you're stuck in the corporate world. Listeners, I have to apologize if you can hear plates crashing and banging. My husband's in the other room making lunch, and I know that the sound carries because we don't have carpets here, so I can hear him, and I'm just worried you might be able to hear him too. But it won't take long; he'll be gone in a minute. So yes, so the career break, then deciding to set up Get
Yeah.
Ahead
Yeah.
VA. So what sparked that, and how did that work at the beginning?
Yeah. So I've got 3 daughters, and it was when the youngest one started school, that's when I thought, right, my husband and I always talked about me having the time with the girls. I didn't not do anything. I did a year's counselling training. That wasn't for me. My mum had run a self-employed when I was growing up. So she'd always shown me firsthand that,
Yeah.
you can do other things to give flexibility. So it was then after when Robin started school, it's like, right, now what is it I really want to do? And so I did some research, and that's when I found the world of virtual assistants in the States. And I guess I was probably quite ahead of my time over here then back in 2010, knew that I didn't want to do the doing, Shelley. And I think that's where I'm slightly
Yeah.
different. I
Yes.
don't have PA background. I wouldn't make a fabulous virtual assistant because I knew that I wanted to do other things. But what I knew was I needed to do the doing myself first to really understand my market and apply what I'd learned as a retail buyer, which was all around looking at your marketplace and what people want. So yeah, I was going to always produce a brand that was bigger than myself.
That's really interesting because I think that's very important. That the fact that you said you needed to do the doing in order to
Mm,
understand what it was. And I'm very big on that. I outsource quite a lot of things, but I only outsource things that I've done myself because then I know
yeah.
what I'm asking of somebody else. And that's quite key because I could say, oh, go analyze this spreadsheet. But if I don't know how to do it myself, I won't realize that they're taking either too long or too little time, in which case,
No,
in both cases, it
exactly.
won't be right. so, so yeah, amazing. So when did you write Virtually Yours? When did that come
So
about?
virtually yours was just before lockdown. So I knew I wanted to scale Get Ahead and I wasn't quite sure how. And that's again when I did some research, that's when I in the franchise mechanism was going to give me that ability to do it. And the book, I'd always thought I'd like to write a book. And then I thought actually it's a wonderful marketing tool to sit alongside. And actually one of my franchises bought into us on the back of that book. So it's covered its costs already. And as I'm having, and I now call my franchisees partners, regional partners, as I'm talking to prospect partners, now I'm using the book still to sort of showcase what we're about, but it also goes deeper than this is just about Get Ahead. It talks about what it's like to get flexibility. What do you personally need in your life? And there are a few exercises in there. And then the wonderful Amanda Johnson did my forward. And that's been a lovely way of sort of bringing in the VA world. But my franchisees generally aren't virtual assistants either. So we're sort of a real mix.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah, that is interesting because they want to just run the business rather than do the doing, I presume, like you did.
Yeah, absolutely. Just launched in Birmingham, and Nicola, who's running that for me, is a ex-recruiter. So I'm narrowed it down even more now, and I think actually that's my way forward is to find because we are identifying a need for a client and then building a virtual team and repeating and repeating. So yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
I find that fascinating how we sort of can look at a evolves over time and we get better at understanding the type of people we're looking to work with as we move forward.
I think that's also very important and very important if
Mm.
you're working with clients, because sometimes I know at the beginning a VA might be wanting to take on all work that comes in through the door because you've got to pay the bills. But after a while, you realize that some of the jobs are not suited to you, or you're not suited to them, or the clients aren't suited to you, and you're not. There's a clash of between the
Oh,
client and the
no,
VA.
absolutely. And that's a big thing. And I'll often say that to the team, not everyone's our client and vice versa. So that comes with confidence, doesn't it? But it's
Yes, yeah,
exactly your point as to why I grew Get Ahead at the rate that I did, is because jobs were coming in and I'm like, I can't, that's not my skill set. So then it's around actually giving a business owner the opportunity to have access to the right different people is through providing different skill set and personality is a big thing for
yeah.
me, Shelley, as well. We always say we match on skill set, but also on personality.
Yeah, that's important. So how does the franchise model work? Because I'm a bit hazy on it. I kind of have the
Yeah, no,
idea
of
there's
course.
different
Yes.
regions, and then
Yes.
within each region, so is that one person managing lots of small virtual assistant practices called
Yes.
Get Ahead?
So, yeah.
How does it work?
So it works by you buy a territory. So you buy, so if I look at Fiona, she's been with me the longest. She runs Leeds and then she subsequently bought York and Harrogate. So she goes networking within that catchment area. She finds the clients that need support and then she matches them from our pool of over 80 virtual experts. So that pool of experts is managed centrally by my head office team, which means they can be working with a number of different partners. And it means my regional partner slash franchisee doesn't have the stress of thinking, oh, how am I going to find people to do this? So that's all part of our toolkit that they get as being part of a franchise.
That's fascinating. I didn't realize that. Now that you say it, I do remember from our last conversation, I think we talked about it, but that's really clever. So you recruit all the virtual assistants to a central pool, and then you
Yeah.
effectively match them or farm them out to the different
Yes.
areas that
Yeah.
need them. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh,
And they're
that's
all freelancers, Shelley, as well. So
yeah.
we are simply almost another client to the freelancer. I need to know that they're doing their own private work. And as we all know, finding work, business development is hard. So I know that the team love it when we say, aha, I've found you the perfect client and we can match them together.
Oh, that's also very useful.
Mm.
So if a VA comes to work under the Get Ahead VA banner, they're not restricted to working with
Oh,
you. They
no,
come and work with other
absolutely not.
clients.
No. Yeah, no,
Yeah.
no, exactly.
Yeah. Now that's interesting because I had visions of, well, I work for Get Ahead VA now. I can't do anything else.
No, 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 no. So
So
from from the whole sort of legal point of view, no, absolutely, they're all things that come and go. And what I love is seeing somebody grow in confidence by being part of our community when perhaps they're fairly new to the industry. And then we've had a few instances where one of our experts is then employed directly by the client on a full-time basis. And you could argue, oh, that's really disappointing. But actually, on the flip side, it's lovely because it shows that we're matching the right caliber of people to the right team.
yeah, and they'll come back to you again from both sides of that coin.
Exactly.
The
Yeah.
VA if she
No,
gets made
exactly.
redundant, and the client when they need more help, which if
Yeah.
they're growing, they're going to need more help. And I think also there is a move now in this online world that we live in, and people, the remote working that is now available to most people, that there is a move even by the very big companies to work with virtual teams. So I
Yeah.
think there's only going to be more and more opportunities going forward from what I can see.
No, very true.
Okay. So I've got some questions here. So I'm just going to look at my questions for a
Okie
minute if
dokie.
anybody wonders what I'm doing. So I wanted to ask that if any of our listeners were thinking of working with a franchise, either as a member of your team or buying into a franchise,
Mhm.
what are the things that they should be thinking about before they do that? Is there specific research they should do? What should they be looking at and for?
I guess if they're looking at buying into a franchise, it's sort of understanding what that role entails. So, as I said, we call them regional partners. I'm finding somebody that's had corporate experience, either in a recruiting role or marketing, but with the underlying ability to manage a team is really important because I need my partners to be active listeners, interested in others, but also have the ability to start building teams and communicate very well. And that role is very much a project management role where the franchisee finds the client, matches them to our team member, lets them ultimately crack on and work together, but have the ability to have those touch points to make sure the client's happy, the team's happy. And ultimately, my franchisee owns that client relationship. So they invoice the client every month. So they still have a role within that, but they're able to grow and scale their own business unit because they're not tied to doing that time delivery. So that's a big part. In terms of joining us as a virtual expert, we've got a link on our website that explains the type of criteria that we're looking for. We did a big push for new team members before Christmas. So we're recording this up in January. So we're
Yes.
now sort of full at the moment, but that doesn't mean we won't be opening our doors later in the year either.
No, well, this will go out in April. So by April, you will
Exactly.
hopefully have expanded some more and
Yeah,
need more people.
exactly. Yeah, exactly.
It's
Yeah,
that never ending, isn't it? It's about in any business keeping the pipeline full and avoiding
exactly.
those severe, because there are ups and downs in any business along the way.
Yeah,
I was just thinking
yeah.
just before Christmas, oh, my diary is really empty, and 2024 was not the best year for me. I'm
Mm,
quite
mm.
honest about that. I was reasonably busy, but could have been busier. And I'm thinking, oh, 2025 is not going to be. And then I decided to sit down and put it all in a spreadsheet, of course. And of course, I realized, it's actually off to a reasonable start because I hadn't written it down. I couldn't see it. It was all going around in my head and it felt like nothing. And I think that's also quite an important lesson is to get things out of your head.
Oh, no, and it's funny. I'm just doing a journaling challenge actually for January, and it's something I've always wanted to do but never sort of committed to. And I found that really interesting. So we have a prompt every day, but I find it really helpful getting this, like you say, out of my head onto paper and setting it out there is a useful exercise.
Well, that's interesting. So what kind of prompts are you getting? Is it business related or life related? You don't have to
Oh
share,
no,
but
no, no.
just generally.
So just generally. So, for example, one of the questions was, "What does January conjure up for you, and how would you like to lean into the month ahead?"
Oh, wow.
Another one was, "What do you repeatedly feel grateful for?" It's really interesting. And
Oh,
then one
wow.
today was, "I wish for." And it's like, oh, I wish for.
Oh,
It's just quite interesting, just where your brain goes and where your hand starts relating. I find it fascinating.
oh, could you send me a link to that? I think I might like to do that myself.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, I'll do that after this.
Yeah, no, I know that journaling is good, but I've never been able to kind of just sit there and
No, I know.
splurge out
Mm,
the writing. So I think
yeah,
that will be very helpful. That will be very helpful. And yeah, I mean, I was really surprised at myself because most years I actually do sit down and do that exercise where I map out what I think
yeah,
is going to happen. But because 2024 was a very difficult year, I live in Israel.
mm,
We've had the war, and
absolutely.
it
Yeah.
felt like wading through treacle at times. And I found my brain wasn't really focused. But I'm back on it now, so we'll be there.
Good girl.
At what point would let's say we have a number of VAs who run large teams that I know of.
Yeah.
So at what point might they think of, okay, well, I've got 30 team members, perhaps I should be looking at a franchise? And would they be setting up their own franchise under their own name?
Mhm.
Or would they be looking to join somebody like yourself? What is,
Yeah, I
or
think
am
they
I
probably,
asking two completely separate questions there?
yeah, I think for me, my franchise partners generally haven't been working in this space before. But if you have, like I was, where I was gaining huge momentum but wanted to sort of make it a more regular activity around the country, that's when a franchise would come into play, I think, because you're right. If you've got a large team like I had back 2016, I was having clients around the UK, but I wanted that momentum. And the way you get momentum is by regularly showing up. And we all know that people buy from people. So for me, it was that classic
Yeah.
thing of actually, I need to replicate what I'm doing, but in different parts of the country. And I needed to make sure I had all of the different part in place to do that. And obviously, you can't just say, oh, I want to franchise my business. There needs to be a whole background checks around actually where's the value, what can you give someone that will enable them to set up and run really quickly versus them doing it themselves. And that's often as in my role as a franchise consultant, we have to really dig deep into somebody's business, say, what value are you giving somebody in exchange for them paying into this business. So if I look at Get Ahead, for £8,000 for a 5-year license, that partner is immediately getting access to my pool of virtual experts. For example. So that means they can start working for a client immediately. They're getting the
Yeah.
marketing support. They're getting all of that behind them. But so it's an interesting question. But I think if you are a VA that has great owner team, there's no reason why you can't look at how you could franchise it.
Okay. And would you be the sort of person that VA who's beginning to think about franchising would talk to as a franchise consultant? So is that separate to Get Ahead?
So I'm self-employed through Ashton's Franchise Consulting, and probably there'll be a conflict of interest probably for them speaking with me, but there'll be other consultants they could work with, definitely.
Okay. Well, that's really interesting. I thought they could just talk to you and
Well, I
they
suppose
would.
they can, but then there's that element of
No, I meant from a
yeah.
point of view of getting the advice about
Yeah.
franchising,
Oh,
not
yeah. No, I'm
necessarily.
always absolutely, no, absolutely. I'm totally open to that. And we're going to be at various franchise shows around the country this year as well. So I would say if you are thinking about how you can scale and grow, those kinds of exhibitions are great.
Oh, that's
Mm.
cool. Are you by any chance, I know we're recording this in January, it's going out in April, but are you coming to the PA show this year?
I'm undecided. Is it in March, Shelley?
It's in February. It's February the
February.
26th and 27th. I know
Oh,
because
okay.
I'll be there. So
You're speaking. Yes,
I'm
I'll check
speaking
my
and
diary. Yeah,
exhibiting. Yes,
yeah.
no, it would
Oh,
be
brilliant. Yeah.
really lovely to see you in person.
Yes,
Person.
absolutely. Yeah, no, good
Okay.
thinking.
So as we start to wind up, what have you got any three top tips or learnings for our listeners, things that they can think about to apply to their businesses? Or in fact, if
Yeah.
they are in corporate, what could they be thinking of? If they're thinking, okay, this sounds really interesting. I'm in corporate, I'm an HR
Mhm.
consultant in the HR team, or a
Yeah.
recruiter has approached me or something. What should they be thinking of before they actually said, oh yeah, I'm going to do this?
I think really understanding, what motivates you. What does your next 5 years look like? And we all know setting something up for yourself is daunting. So I will often talk to partners around actually setting this up and then running it alongside another income stream as well. Because as we all know, don't we, Shelley, when you start your own business, you're not going to be earning the salary you're getting in your corporate environment
Yeah.
straight away. So I'm finding that quite interesting. And one of my partners is a business coach and she runs this alongside that work. And that's been really interesting because it sort of slightly takes the the pressure off. And I think, yeah, really being honest with yourself about, what motivates you and how important. 'Cause I think what big thing is, we all know when you do start something for yourself, you may think actually that would be really quite isolating and lonely, and that actually is what you don't get in a franchise environment. You're part of that wider team in a non-competitive environment, and that's really important. So, and I would also say, look at LinkedIn and just get a sense of what's out there. And I think working on your own in that kind of environment, it's amazing how many people you find on an online space, isn't there? And I know certainly, you're so good, Shelley, at giving people advice and support, and it's really out there if you're authentic and real and ask for it.
Yeah, I think those are really good tips. So, listeners, if you're a VA and thinking that you'd like to set up a franchise, then have a chat, with Rebecca just to see where you should go. I'm sure she'll point you in the right direction.
Absolutely. Yeah, yeah.
If,
No, I'd
if
love that. Mm.
even if Rebecca can't actually help you because of the conflict of interest, if you're a VA and you'd like to be part of her team, have a look at the website, which will be on the show notes. All the contact information will be there, so you can see when they're next opening up for the next tranche of people to join. And if you're a PA or an EA and you're thinking that this is something that you might be interested in doing, then also do have a chat with Rebecca, because you never know where it might lead. Talking to people costs nothing.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, so true. Oh, thanks, Shelley. I've had a lovely conversation.
Yeah, no, it has. It's been very, very informative. And listeners, I hope you've enjoyed it. This has been Virtually Amazing Assistants, the podcast for assistants everywhere. I'm Shelley Fishel, the MS Office Maestro, teaching you how to make the most of your Microsoft Office applications. So do get in touch if you need any help. The show notes will have all of Rebecca's contact information. There's also a blog, a website, and a YouTube video that goes along with the audio of the podcast. And do remember to subscribe to everything. And we will see you next week with my next guest.